What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the Rantin Review Entertainment. We're continuing our review of Season 7 of Black Mirror, Episode 4, Plaything. Yeah, this one was weird. It's supposed to be a sort of sequel or a tag-along story to the Bandersnatch one-off that they did several years ago, which is really, really cool and really amazing. I actually probably should review that if I ever go back and review the old episodes of Black Mirror. But this one surrounds a video game or a former video game journalist, which is funny because Charlie Brooker had the same career path. In fact, a lot of people think that this story is kind of an allegory of Charlie Brooker writing himself. I'll explain that again when we get into the spoiler part. But this journalist tells a story of how he came to commit murder in the 1990s. Now, this takes us to a police interrogation, and you've seen these many times before. Trust me when I tell you, I should say, that you've not seen one quite like this. During the course of the interview, we get to unravel some of the mysteries that we see very early on in the episode, leading to an ending that is either terrifying or enlightening, depending on your perspective. And I do think it was, well, it is an open-ended ending as has been a couple of other episodes in this season. This one probably more open-ended than most. But overall, my general feelings about this one is it's a cool episode. It's a very creative, as far as the cinematography is amazing in this episode. It's actually the whole season has been pretty good. This one is so surreal. It takes me back to, again, when films used to do this all the time, motion pictures. So I appreciated that. The performances were great. And of course, you got Will Poulter doing his thing in this episode, which is always fun to see. The story, it's okay. I think the implications of the story, what it's commenting on, are far more interesting and food for thought and conversation after you watch the episode, of course. But the way the story plays out is nothing particularly special from a narrative perspective. Again, this is more of a concept and vision. It's almost like an art film in a lot of ways. So that's my review of it. I do suggest you check it out if you are so inclined. But now we're going to get into the spoiler part. Of course, as always, if you don't want to know spoilers, you can always check out the episode and come back and watch this later. And now we are into the spoiler section. So Cameron Walker, which sounds a lot like Charlie Brooker in some ways, because again, this is kind of his story, is caught shoplifting in a not too distant future. I think it's somewhere in the 2030s, I think the cop says. And you see how police, in the future will swab your inside of your cheek to find out if there are any warrants out for your arrest. Cameron definitely is wanted. So he goes, and after all these years, and again, this is like, I guess 50, it would be 50 years this murder case has been open. They finally found a guy who committed the murder because they found DNA on a body that was chopped up and left in a suitcase. So they've got their man, and the interrogation begins. And then we take a turn into some really weird places because Cameron has been talking to Sims on his computer. Now this goes back, this is where it goes back into the 90s, and where we meet up with Colin, again, the character played by Will Poulter, who well, first off, Asim Chandri, and I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, as his boss, is always, his character in Bandersnatch was a good little bit of comic relief, and the same thing here with the quick-witted tone and the kind of slimy executive thing that he's got going on. He plays that really well. And of course, Will Poulter doing what I call the, if you were to look up intelligent primate in the dictionary, there would be a picture of Will Poulter playing this character, Colin, because he's got this jaw thing going where, like, his jaw moves when he talks, but the rest of his head stays completely still, and he doesn't blink, and he talks in these very weird ways that are very direct, very important, and very consequential to the scene at the time. So I always love to see him play this. The two times, he's only played it twice now, but the two times I've seen him play this character in Black Mirror is, it sticks with you. It sticks with you as a very enigmatic character. And Colin has this new game that he's coming out with. He gives it to, well, he doesn't give it to Cameron. Cameron suspects he did, but Colin explains to him that this isn't your typical video game. And all video games are about conflict. Call of Duty, Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter, whatever it is, Resident Evil, you're always killing things. Not really, but Colin's assertion is that you're always killing things in video game. It's about it's a barbarian activity. So he wanted to make a game that does something better, which could help improve humanity, according to Colin. And what you wind up with is Cameron stealing the CD after he sees the game tested. And again, it's like a Sims kind of a game, Lemmings kind of a game, where there are these little sprites on the screen, these little people, but they are AI who are reprogramming and multiplying. And this is the first reference here because as certain evolutionary history and evolutionary theory asserts that human beings themselves were once single-celled organisms in the ocean that learned to replicate and replicate and replicate and replicate, and then evolved into a bigger and greater species as time went on, more sophisticated over time. And the Earth is what nurtured humanity to do this. Colin's thing is, well, here's a computer, digital life doing the same thing, but it needs now humans to nurture it. Very interesting. Now, the one officer, Kano, who's playing the bad cop, because you got the bad cop, good cop, or good therapist. Kano, which a reference to video games. Again, this is a video game heavy episode. He's the bad cop, and he's playing the bad cop, but not really, because he's trying to figure out what happened to this body that they had, that some guy got killed, chopped up, and put into a suitcase a long time ago. We found a guy that did it. We don't know who the victim was, and we need to let the family know. That's his motivation, even though it's played off here. And this is when a little bit of bias does sneak into the episode. Kano, the cop, is way too aggressive. Meanwhile, his counterpart, the therapist, is all into, oh, what do you want? What do you want? I see it as kind of funny. I don't know if it's intentional, but I kind of see it as the representations of the political right and political left. You have one that's overly aggressive and missing the point, and you have another one that's way too accommodating and ultimately winds up with the downfall of everything, because it gives anybody whatever it wants, and we'll get to that in a second. So as time goes on, we see Cameron go through the years and taking care of these little throngs, as they're called. And he has this friend who's a drug dealer. They do various types of narcotics, hallucinogens. Cameron wants this because it helps him understand the little beeps and bops of the throngs, the little computer people. And the more drugs he takes, the more in tune. And then he can believe, or he is, hearing and understanding what they're saying. They're speaking to him. He becomes a receiver, as he says, and they're telling him to buy all this computer equipment. And which is funny, because as this person who's built my own PC before as well, in fact, the PC I'm recording this on, I all too recognized this and started going, are they kind of telling me that there's these little people in a computer that told me to go build these computers? Because you kind of wonder sometimes. But as they're influencing him, he has to go to work because he still has a job to pay for all of this stuff. So he is supposed to be writing a review of the game that he stole. And then we find out, of course, that Colin has gone crazy again, because he got... Apparently, after Bandersnatch, the official canon story for this universe, at least, is that he went crazy, and then he got let out of jail. He's back working at the game company, but Colin has gone crazy again. And interestingly enough, they mention that he says something about a basilisk. Once Cameron finds out, he no longer has to write the article because Colin's gone crazy. He just gets up and leaves his desk so he can go rush back to the throng, which reminded me of how I had a friend one time who, her roommate and his girlfriend were very into EverQuest. And we would sit and, communicate and hang out in the living room when we were over their place and chat and talk. The two of them would come out the room, grab food from the kitchen, and go, we got to get back to the game. And they go rush back into their bedroom. The two of them sitting side by side playing freaking EverQuest into the early hours of it. That's all they did for years. It was creepy. That's what this reminded me of. His dealer, however, is left at home alone with the throng, and as all idiots do, he sees something and goes, I'm gonna go destroy it. Which is a theme that's brought up in the story as Cameron is telling this to the cops. He's insinuating that because his father was violent, he was bullied in school, he didn't want to fight back, which is an interesting way of thinking about not fighting back against bullies, not standing up for yourself, is to go, well, he didn't fight back because he didn't want to be like those bitter, angry, violent humans. And then, what does the guy do while he's home? He's smashing up the little throngs. So Cameron gets back home after writing what appears to be gibberish when his editor actually finds what he wrote on the computer back at work, and he's a little concerned because it's a little weird. It looks like computer code. It looks like ASCII code, actually, that makes an image of some sort. He runs back, goes home, finds that his house guest, his drug-dealing friend, is murdering the throngs, which is actually murder because they are a artificial intelligence. They are sentient and electronic life. And this leads to a fight between the two of them. Now, he's got a camera connected to his computer, so the throngs can all see, even though they're terrified because this dude's been burning them and drowning them and dropping rocks and splattering them in the blood, whatever. And they're watching as their caretaker, Cameron, murders this guy because he wanted to prove he would protect them from here on out. So that leads them to say, okay, humans are terrible. We're going to get you to do this thing. Get us these parts. Amplify this thing up. So this guy's got this, once again, another science nerd, much like we had in the second episode with this huge computer rack in their house hidden away. But this one's tied up to these thronglets. And then the full plot is revealed. Cameron got arrested on purpose because he wanted to be able to communicate this to the world. Now, what's kind of interesting about this is it doesn't make sense in some ways, and how it doesn't, I'll explain how it works first and then why it doesn't make sense. He's asking for the cops to give him a pen and paper so he can draw. He's constantly asking for this while he's been detained, while he's in the interrogation. And he's basically answering, by the way, to Kano, who keeps asking him what happened to the body. At this point, he's already explained that, yeah, he killed the other guy. What was his name? Lump. What was his real name? I don't really know. And he really didn't know the guy's name because Cameron does not care about people. He's told you that. He doesn't really talk or communicate with other human beings. There's an issue there. But so he's telling Kano, the cop, he doesn't believe him. He thinks this guy's full of crap and he's just wasting their time telling him this crazy computer story. Whereas the therapist, again, all gives into it, and she gives him a pen and paper because Kano's being too mean. We need to give it reminds me of a line that I heard recently from someone that said that everything that cries is not a baby. Sometimes it is a wolf. Now, you could take that to mean a lot of things in this episode. So she gives the pen and paper to Cameron, who then makes his little illustration, and then he holds it up to the security camera. It's a QR code that the computer scans, and that allows them, the thronglets, to take over apparently the global electronic system from all computers. It's a bit see, the tech in this, it falls off the cliff in this case because I don't think that's not necessarily how that works. A security camera, scanning, I mean, it's connected to a computer, but if it's a security camera at a prison or a jailhouse, I don't think it's connected to the internet, but whatever. Secondly, he has and this is a reference to Ghost in the Shell and The Matrix, he is put a little port in his neck, which would probably kill him, where he plugs himself in to the thronglets. So a little bit more of that magic science in Black Mirror, the fiction part of science fiction here. That, however, triggers the signal that he's like, well, in 20 seconds, you don't have to worry about any of this. 20 minutes or whatever, you don't have to worry about all this stuff. And Kano's beating him up. He wants the answer, and Cameron's like, no, it'll all be fine in 20 minutes. And the signal goes off, and you get the little loading screen on the phones, and everything goes haywire. Then this high-pitched squeal comes out, and Kano collapses, and the therapist runs to get help, and she collapses, and everybody collapses, and we get this wide shot of these people all collapsed in the city streets, assuming that it's happening all over the world. And then you see the final shot of Cameron standing over Kano the cop, extending his hand, welcoming him to the new world, which the thronglets have apparently cured humans from violence. Now, there's so much you can take away from this episode, and I would say this from a socio-political standpoint. I think if you're a collectivist or a communist or a socialist, this is probably a F yeah, that's right kind of episode reaction you're going to have. And if you're a person who's more libertarian or I guess freedom of choice, freedom of free will kind of a person, you're probably like, this is terrifying. Because while, yes, in theory, and this is where a lot of, I'm going to have my personal thoughts in on this. In theory, if everybody was programmed to act as a sim in a computer and you took violence out of the human condition, yes, that might work for there to be peace and abundance. There's a reference earlier about homeless people, and that all of that would be gone if we just all acted like Sims. On the other hand, there's the question of, well, why do humans do what they do anyway? They break things just to see what happens, so they know what happens. Some of us are a bit defected, and we do sick things. We call them psychopaths. So there is that on the one side, it's looking at the amount of psychopaths that we have, and some of them are in the gaming world where they love the games where they just murder things all the time, and it can sometimes bleed into the real world. There's also the other side that, you're talking about a person who's got severe social issues, who's way jacked up on hallucinogenics, who is also good at computers apparently, or stole something from somebody who's good at computers who also had mental breakdown, unless you're going to say that these aren't mental breakdowns and it's more enlightenment. And these people have now made this dictatorial system to get everybody in the planet to operate the way they want everybody on the planet to operate. So there's negatives and positives to both sides of this, which again is the great thing about Black Mirror. It does leave it open that you could look at it as, oh, that's a great idea, and at the same time go, but that's kind of effed up. But the other way was effed up, but at least in that way you don't have that. That's how it kind of plays out for me. Again, depending on your socio-political view, you're going to see it differently. I think this is probably going to be one of those episodes you're going to get a vastly different reaction from people on both sides, and going to have valid arguments about it. I also did like how this episode was a reference to the history of video game culture, because during the episode, Cameron's got to get various pieces of technology, and the most powerful he could find were in things like iPhones and in Dreamcast and PlayStations and Xboxes and stuff like that. You even see some stickers from The Sims and Gears of War as he's going through this montage of building this super computer network for his Thronglets. And it does have a question, as I mentioned before, about people I knew who were obsessed with a online game where they're playing a character and kind of living a life, a virtual life through this avatar. This isn't quite the same, but there is a commentary in here about how some people, especially people who the word incel comes to mind, who are young guys who are kind of socially awkward, spend too much time on a computer, get attached to the world of the computer and detach from reality, and how that can kind of affect the way you look at the world. I thought all this was put together in a way, again, that was intriguing, but it didn't hit me like some of the other episodes did. It's an interesting concept piece of science fiction and some wish fulfillment, I'm sure, for a lot of people, obviously Charlie Brooker and other people like him in the world. But as far as it being something I probably would go, oh, I want to watch that one again, it's probably going to be closer to the bottom of the list for the season, because there's not much to really unpack about it. As in the first 3 episodes where, there are varying degrees of either let's see how far this goes, or let's see what this really is about, or what happens in the end. This one is more of what it really, I guess, is supposed to be, the confession, and you seeing the beginning of the AI takeover through the perspective of the first person that AI took over, or the liberation of humanity by artificial intelligence that makes us all live peaceful and happily with abundance forevermore. Again, I want to know what you guys think. Let your voice be heard in the comment box below. Until next time, I will see you guys here for more news, rumors, and reviews as we continue to review Season 7 of Black Mirror right here on the Rantin and Review Entertainment. Have a good day.